Hi, I'm Alex McEwen. Today I'm going to be reading and understanding a poem by John Keats called Lines on the Mermaid Tavern. I'll start us off by just reading through it once. Souls of poets, dead and gone, what Elysium have ye known? Happy field or mossy cavern, choicer than the Mermaid Tavern? Have ye tippled drink more fine than mine host's canary wine? Or are fruits of paradise sweeter than those dainty pies of venison? O generous food, dressed as though bold Robin Hood would, with his maid Marianne, sup and bowls from horn and can. I have heard that on a day mine host's signboard flew away, nobody knew whither, till an astrologer's old quill to a sheepskin gave the story. Said he saw you in your glory underneath a new old sign, sipping beverage divine and pledging with contented smack the mermaid in the zodiac. Souls of poets dead and gone, what Elysium have ye known? Happy field or mossy cavern, choicer than the Mermaid Tavern? Okay, so what I'll do is I'll start off by just talking about some of the more difficult terminology in this poem, as well as talking a bit about the overall feelings and intentions behind it. So, souls of poets dead and gone, he's making a statement to the dead poets of the past who John Keats felt was very important. He was someone who was very interested in the medieval English literature that was being recovered at the time that he was alive, which had been forgotten about for a very long time. And he was very interested, as we can see in this poem, in the poets of the Elizabethan era as well, Shakespeare and Ben Jonson. And I'll get to that when talking about the Mermaid Tavern. So what Elysium have ye known? Elysium, that is the afterlife of the heroes in the ancient Greek tradition. So he's also calling back here to the classical poets of Homer and Virgil and others who actually in their books actually did have their heroes go to Elysium and visit the people in the afterlife and see this wonderful sort of field of the heroes who had died in the Trojan War. What Elysium have ye known? Happy field or mossy cavern, choicer than the Mermaid Tavern. So here we have this nature sort of imagery of he's imagining, that in the afterlife these poets are able to go and experience nature. John Keats was a romantic poet, and romantic poets believed deeply in humans being in contact with nature, being one with nature. My heart leaps up when I behold a rainbow in the sky. So it was when my life began, so it is now. I am a man. So be it when I shall grow old or let me die. The child is father of the man, and I would wish my days to be held each to each in natural piety. Natural piety. So when Wordsworth wrote that poem, he was talking about human beings needing to be in oneness with nature, with the rainbow, feeling like a child, and just always until their dying day being that child who just is part of nature rather than just using nature for his own purposes. And so Keats imagines that these poets are going to somewhere natural, happy field or mossy cavern, choicer than the Mermaid Tavern. And this is where he brings in the point of the poem, the Mermaid Tavern. What is that? That's a pub that existed in the Elizabethan era, so, the 1600s, that poets at the time talked about going to this pub and meeting up with other poets and having big debates, big literary debates. So it's said, we know that Ben Jonson went there. We know that the tradition at the time Keats was writing was that Shakespeare was a frequenter of the Mermaid Tavern. Basically, the idea was that anyone who was a great writer at that time would be visiting there, drinking all this wine together, having these big conversations. So you can imagine how a poet later on who idolized these previous generation of poets would be imagining that as being the ideal scenario when you die. But he's saying, well, what about something even more ideal than that, than the Mermaid Tavern? Have ye tippled drink more fine than mine host's canary wine? This was, in fact, the wine that they drank at the Mermaid Tavern, wine from the Canary Islands, which was considered more refined than everywhere else. Something to do with the volcanic climate of the Canaries. Or are fruits of paradise sweeter than those dainty pies of venison? Venison was considered the sweetest, most delicious meat at the time. So he's bringing us back to all of these things that those poets of the previous eras loved so much: their canary wine and their venison, their deer meat. Oh, generous food, dressed as though bold Robin Hood and Marian. So taking us even further back. This goes beyond the Elizabethans, back beyond the Middle Age poets, and all the way back to those really early times of legendary England. Dressed as though bold Robin Hood would, with his maid Marian sup and bowers from horn and can. So I was saying before that he was interested in medieval poetry, right? So here he's taking us right back to the early Middle Ages with Robin Hood and Marian in the legends, drinking, and he has this sort of idealized view of the Middle Ages. These days we have a bit of a negative view of the Middle Ages. We think maybe it was a bit dreary. We realise perhaps that they didn't really have all of those modern luxuries. But at the time Keats was writing, the Middle Ages was being revived as this sort of beautiful past that had been lost. And so he's imagining what Robin Hood and Marian having this beautiful time at a feast and hoping that that's what the poets are experiencing now that they're dead, and perhaps that he himself will experience once he's dead. I've heard that on a day mine host's signboard flew away. So notice how he revives the old language as well. I have heard that on a day mine host's signboard flew away. Nobody knew whither. He's using a lot of old language, reminiscent of the Elizabethans and the Middle Ages. Till an astrologer's old quill to a sheepskin gave the story. So this astrologer's not writing on like normal modern paper. He's writing on sheepskin, right? So yet again we're getting this, bringing us back to the past glory of the poets that Keats loves. Said he saw you in your glory underneath the new old sign. So this is Keats saying, his host, the pub that he attends, his signboard flew away. An old astrologer, nobody knew whither, till an astrologer's old quill to a sheepskin gave the story. So some astrologer, some mystical person said, I saw the signboard. I saw you. And who is Keats talking to? He's talking to those poets of the past, the souls of poets dead and gone. Said he saw you in your glory underneath a new old sign, sipping beverage divine and pledging with contented smack the mermaid in the zodiac. So they're in the zodiac now, they're up in the skies, they're in heaven, but they're pledging with contented smack the mermaid, that Mermaid Tavern that they loved so much. This astrologer actually saw them. He saw them, these poets dead and gone, wherever they are. He saw how happy they were, and this makes Keats happy, of course. He's dreaming that, he's a poet. He knows he's going to die young because his family, they die young. He spent his life seeing his family die around him, and then he died. So he knows he's going to die young. He knows that he's thinking, where am I going to go when I die? What's my life going to be after my life? Am I going to meet Shakespeare? Am I going to meet these other great Elizabethan writers? And he's saying, and am I going to meet the classical writers, Virgil and Homer? And am I going to meet the medieval writers, Chaucer? And he's excited about that. And he's dreaming of this amazing place he's going to go to where all the poets go and they can all sit around drinking and having fun and discussing poetry. Souls of poets dead and gone, what Elysium have ye known? Happy field or mossy cavern, joyouser than the Mermaid Tavern. He doesn't even consider that they might be in a bad place. He just has this happy view, right? What Elysium have ye known? Happy field or mossy cavern. They're either in a happy field or in a mossy cavern, and either way it's going to be even better than the Mermaid Tavern, which is this place from the past that Keats idolizes and just desperately wants to go to so much and wishes existed in his life. I'll read it one more time for you, now that you have that context. I do love this poem. Let's talk a bit about let's talk a bit about what he does with the form here. So what are we actually looking at? How does he make this beautiful, joyous effect? This is a poem that's very easy to memorize by heart. I would strongly recommend that if you enjoy the poem, you try to memorize it by heart. I don't think it will take you too much effort. Souls of poets dead and gone. Souls of poets dead and gone. So that's 4 beats. So that's actually trochaic tetrameter. So souls, it starts on a hard beat. Souls of poets dead and gone. What Elysium have ye known? Happy field or mossy cavern, choicer than the Mermaid Tavern. Have ye tippled drink more fine than mine host's canary wine? Or are fruits of paradise sweeter than those dainty pies of venison? O generous food, dressed as though bold Robin Hood would with his maid Marianne, sup and boughs from horn and can. So most of them are trochaic tetrameter, so 4 beats of dardum, which gives us a very onward marching sort of quality. It's the poem pushes itself on with its trochees, its dardums, so which feels a lot more trotting along, a lot more forceful than a series of iams which goes da-dum, da-dum, da-dum. That's sort of how we speak normally. We don't usually speak in trochees like we're seeing here. This feels much more artificial, but also much more heightened. Souls of poets dead and gone, what Elysium have ye known? Happy field or mossy cavern, choicer than the Mermaid Tavern? Have ye tippled drink more fine than mine host's canary wine? Or had fruits of paradise sweeter than those dainty pies of venison? O generous food, dressed as though bold Robin Hood would with his maid Marianne, sup and boughs from horn and can. So there's one line there I noticed, of venison, O generous food. So that one's in iams, which is an interesting choice there that he swapped to iams. Sweeter than those dainty pies of venison. Which I think you can feel a sort of slackening of the verse as soon as he gets to that point, right? And he even puts a break there with the question mark. It gives us a bit of a break of venison. It sort of trails off of venison because that son isn't even a strong syllable. O generous food. And then he comes back again. O generous food, dressed as though bold Robin Hood would with his maid Marianne, sup and boughs from horn and can. He also has these sort of forced rhymes here, which feel they sort of help us to push on the meter as well, the rhythm, because they're forcing us to really read these things hard. Dressed as though bold Robin Hood would with his maid Marianne, sup and boughs from horn and can. Well, you can read it in a more. You don't have to rhyme those. You don't have to force the rhyme there. It does sound all right if you don't. O venison, O generous food, dressed as though bold Robin Hood would with his maid Marian, sup and boughs from horn and can. But I think, given the overall feel of the poem, I think you retain the feel much better if you do give Marianne a bit of to rhyme with can, a bit more of a forced rhyme. You emphasize that would, which he has put a comma after it. So I think that makes sense to try to push that hood would, because he sort of lightens up on the venison and then he comes back and he's rising, and he's also bringing us back to this medieval period where the poets were definitely not subtle in that era, to say the least. So if we look at the rhyme scheme, we've got gone, known, so another bit of an off rhyme that needs to be forced to some extent. Cavern, tavern, very pure rhyme, but a feminine rhyme which always feels a little more a little less subtle. Feminine rhymes feel a little funny, really, because you're rhyming 2 different syllables instead of 1 syllable. So here masculine rhyme, you're rhyming 1 syllable. Here you're rhyming 2 syllables with each other. Fine wine. So we've had couplets so far. Gone, known, AA, BB, CC, dice, pies, food, hood, Marian, can. So it's all couplets all the way down, but with either. Other than this fine and wine, everything else is a sort of forced rhyme or a feminine. So we have one feminine pair and then a bunch of forced rhymes. And then we have day, away, till, quill, story, glory, sign, divine, smack, zodiac. So that's more, those ones are more sort of normal rhymes, but still with some feminine rhyming. I have heard I have heard that on a day mine host's signboard flew away. Look at that. So many strong syllables there. Mine host's signboard flew away. What that's doing to us is it's sort of building up the rhythm. So mine host's signboard flew away. It's like each foot, the meter's actually getting higher. Each foot is a bit higher than the previous. Mine host's signboard flew away. So it feels like the signboard's flying away actually there. He's connected up the meter with the meaning. I have heard that on a day mine host's signboard flew away. Nobody knew whither, till an astrologer's old quill to a sheepskin gave the story. Said he saw you in your glory underneath a new old sign, sipping beverage divine and pledging with contented smack the mermaid in the zodiac. Souls of poets, and then he repeats the original four lines. Okay, so I'll read through it again. Souls of poets dead and gone, what Elysium have ye known? Happy field or mossy cavern, choicer than the Mermaid Tavern? Have ye tippled drink more fine than mine host's canary wine? Or are fruits of paradise sweeter than those dainty pies of venison? O generous food, dressed as though bold Robin Hood would, with his maid Marianne, sup and bowls from horn and can. I've heard that on a day mine host's signboard flew away. Nobody knew whither, till an astrologer's old quill to a sheepskin gave the story. Said he saw you in your glory underneath a new old sign, sipping beverage divine and pledging with contented smack the mermaid in the zodiac. Souls of poets dead and gone, what Elysium have ye known? Happy field or mossy cavern, choicer than the Mermaid Tavern.